Record. Okay. Welcome to the Bennett Innovations podcast, where we discuss building with AI and creating AI tools, as well as software architecture. Um, with me today, I'm Lindsay Macvean, and with me today is Emilie Macvean, my co-host, producer, and sister. And today, I thought we might have a chat about token economics, which is a thing I've heard the buzz phrase recently. Uh, Anything to add, Emily?
No, just an interesting word, and I'm looking forward to understanding what it means.
Yeah, okay. Um, so I'm going to take you on a journey. Um, what I have seen, and again, I might be missing something here, but what I have seen over the last 6 months to a year is that people want agents to do stuff for them, to do sales, to qualify leads, to do processes in the business. And if they're not careful, what they end up with is a huge bill of tokens at the end of the month. I should probably define what a token is. A token is one, two, three, or more letters, which is a unit of well, it's a unit of money, but it's a unit in the English language. So a token might be the word and, but if it's a longer word, like difference, it might be DIFF and then ER and then ENCE. Like that might be three tokens. So the way that AI companies like count their money is how many tokens did you send us and how many tokens did we send back to you? And it's usually like 0.00001 cent per token, but
Like,
it racks up, right?
yeah.
Because and so I was playing around with it. I'm building agents. I tried OpenClaw, and there's sort of a running joke I'm seeing on social media where it's like, okay, I pay $200 for my Claude Max or whatever, um, and then at the end of the month, they actually bill me like 8 grand because I've just been using it so much, and I was on like just bill me at the end of the month for any extra usage, and they just
Yeah.
and there's different depending on the provider. They might warn you, they might not, but at the end of the day, it's difficult to keep a cap on it if you're really actively using your agents.
Yeah.
Um, so my vision was to try and figure out um, how to find a way to have a fixed monthly cost that actually allowed you to do everything you needed to do. And so at first I was like naively, I was like, oh, so there's all these people using OpenClaw on a Mac Mini and they just stack them on their desks. And so there must be a model on the Mac Mini, like an AI model, that's actually basically they just pay for the cost of the electricity. But it turns
Yeah.
out that those Mac Minis are actually still talking to the cloud, still talking to OpenAI or Claude or whoever, and they're still racking up token costs. Really, the only reason they needed a Mac Mini was because they needed a desktop which they could use to like open a browser or use the keychain or whatever. And so it was the agent was then able to do stuff like a human, like actually like log into their email or whatever. And so you don't actually necessarily need a Mac Mini if you're not going to do that stuff. If you're going to have like an agent that just focuses on like one thing and do it really well, like find me customers,
Yeah.
uh, then you can do it with not just like any machine that you've got or in the cloud, you can find a machine. But it's a bit of nuts and bolts because a lot of like everyday people, everyday consultants, trade people, whatever, they just open their chat GPT and chat GPT or Grok or Claude Copilot, and they sort of are able to get stuff done using that. But the challenge is um can they figure out how to set all of that up to do a specific thing? Can they figure out how it's useful rather than just be presented with a service that's an AI service, like get me customers?
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's where I'm sitting, where I'm like, okay, I could build a custom tool for a specific purpose that's more specific than the general AI of Claude that might end up with a large bill at the end of the month. Anyway, I'm starting to waffle here, but the point is that I think there's a way, and I found it. I've rented some Mac Minis. Oh, actually, it's actually not Mac Mini; it's Mac Studio, and I've put a model on the Studio, which is not a frontier model, not like the cutting edge, most intelligent, but it's close. It's like a 2024 type model. And I'm going to start building some agents that do stuff like find me a customer, and
Yeah.
using that local model. So there's a fixed cost at the end of the month. It's
Yeah.
sovereign, so it's on one machine. So I'm not just handing my data over to some nameless tech company like OpenAI or Microsoft or whoever. And
Yeah.
I can build all of the context and features that I need. Like it just needs to do one thing well. It needs to do research on LinkedIn. It needs to, like a few people that might be my customers. It needs to send them an email if it can, or whatever. It does, one thing well. Probably I'd have a second agent to do sending the emails. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
sort of what I'm working on at the moment.
Two questions there. Do you think where they've gone wrong when they've been building these before, when they are using Overcloud or whatever, is that they're too general? Like what you'd be doing is specifying it and having it, you know what you want out that you're building it yourself, so you know exactly what you want to build. But why do you think that they haven't built that with the other models that they've done, with like the other ways that they're doing those types of things?
Oh, you mean like why hasn't OpenAI built these tools?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they want to be a platform. So what they're good at is
Yeah.
training the next frontier model. Like where do like
Okay.
all the so what's happened is to go back in time to what was it 2018, 17, something like that. There was a paper written at Google called All You Need Is Attention. And in that paper, they came up with this new way of doing AI that
Mhm.
allows you to actually start getting like real English out rather than just like English that looks a bit weird or
Yeah.
it's not very clever. It just forgets what it said even like one sentence ago. And so that was what we now call the GPT, the general purpose transformer. Um, and is it I might have that acronym wrong, but it's a transformer anyway. And um, and that technology has now been iterated. So they started getting a bit better. 2020, 21, 22. ChatGPT came out in November 2022, I believe, or
Yeah.
maybe it was November 21. I forget now. But the point is that that was then the start of this revolution where people were like, wow, we can actually talk to the AI and it can do stuff. And then there was, okay, we can now plug it in to actually sort our emails out or, order a pizza for us or whatever. And so now we can plug it into like every business has ChatGPT as like front of house, like on when you call the phone line, you're talking to like a
Yeah.
model, one of these newer models.
Yeah.
When I say model, I just mean an AI.
Yeah.
And but the thing that people don't realize is to get there, like every successive time they've done an update on ChatGPT, it's cost them an order of magnitude. So it's cost them like 1 million, then 10 million, then 100 million, then a billion, and then 10 billion.
Yeah.
And like each time it's like taken slightly longer. It was like train in a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I don't know everything that's going on at those labs. But they're getting good at doing improvements on different things. But the point is, this is big capital investment. So it's the equivalent of, building the high-rise building. Like if you went to a developer who was building a high-rise building and said, well, why don't you just do all the shops in the building? Why don't you just like build
Yeah.
all businesses and like rent all the apartments yourself? It's like, well, no, I'm a
Yeah.
platform. I'm building the platform so other people can come and use this service. Like
Also,
I'm doing the big capital
they,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, they're creating the costs for other people that they're, I suppose, making money on. Because somebody said the other day, they said that AI, like ChatGPT, all these different platforms, aren't really making money. They're building things, and the electric and all the bills that they have to pay, they're not making much money. Is that true, or is that
That
just
that is largely true. They're playing on what is traditionally called in the tech sector a hockey stick, because they've taken on
yeah,
massive capital investment. People have put money in, they've taken on debt, whatever, to train these models. And then what they're hoping for is that I think if you look at the graph of like capital to return on something like Google or Facebook, like there was huge investment at the beginning while they got their data centers set up and they were building the network, and it was just costing money. month on month on month, year on year. And I think it was like for Google, I think it might have been something like 15 or 20 years from when they first started, from when to the time they actually repaid all the capital and investment that they sunk in to when it became truly just make a money making machine. And I might be wrong on that, but it can be a long time frame. So I think that's what they're planning on. They're planning on like a 10-year time frame of like if we just sink money into this, we're going to get to a point where it's just so good, it's making so much money that it's going to make back all the money we've stuck in. But at the
Yeah.
moment, they're not able to cover the basic unit of like running the electricity and the cost of creating the next model. And I should say that there's a difference between training a model. So again, just think of the way I think of it is like a distillation system. So have you ever seen a distillation system where they make like whiskey or vodka or
Yeah.
whatever? So
Yeah.
imagine that you've got all the data on the internet and anywhere else they can get their hands on it.
Yeah.
And that's in a big pool, like a vat, and they're then running a training process, which is like a distilling, glass tubing, where it's extracting out the pure essence of
Yeah.
what that content is, and then it drips out the end a model, which is like a little drop of this is what the essence of that big puddle of information is, and you're getting
Mhm.
better and better at distilling like the perfect essence so that it's like really clever. It knows everything that any human has ever said, any ever.
Yeah.
And you take that little drop and you drop it into servers that are then being used by the public, by companies, by whoever. And I like to think of that drop as a brain on the shelf. So now imagine you've got like a brain vending machine where you just like you press the button and you get a brain, and
Yeah.
that brain can be used by anyone. It can be used by a big company that's trying to figure out why their customers aren't buying anymore, or it could be used by like a tradesman who just wants to, estimate the cost of a job they're going to do. Uh,
Okay.
and so the better that what you're doing is you're choosing which brain on the vending machine you want. Do you want the cheap brain, which isn't very
Yeah.
good, but it kind
Yeah.
of does okay for a simple job, or do you want the
Yeah.
expensive brain that's like really good, but it costs a lot of money to run? And so that's where the token economics comes back in. How much does it cost to use that brain?
And that comes in when you pay for it, you're getting the cheaper brain or you're getting the more expensive brain when
Yeah.
you don't. 'Cause I've stopped paying for my chat GPT and I've noticed it's taken a little bit of a toll. And it's coming out with different answers to what it used to. But touching back on the Mac minis that you were talking about,
Yeah.
I remember when we spoke about it before, you said that you'd have privacy because we were talking about it if you were to use AI for schools or stuff like that, you'd need to make sure that it was fully private because otherwise, like data and all that kind of jazz. So when people are using it now to run the systems on, but they're still using the cloud or Claude or whatever they're using, do they still have privacy or is privacy just null and gone?
This is a really interesting question because so so if you're using um just off the shelf, you download ChatGPT on your phone or you download Grok or whatever, you are giving up some privacy. Like I haven't read the terms and conditions in detail, but it's very similar to if you use Google or you use Facebook. They're taking your metadata. Maybe they're complying to the letter of the law and not tracking your name or giving your name out to everyone, but they're still taking your metadata and feeding it into ad engines that can advertise to you or potentially depending on the terms and conditions selling it to third parties or even just as simple as just taking it outside the region you're in, like taking it to the US, and big intelligence agencies might be looking at your data to see if you've done anything naughty. And so that that is, so you were giving up some privacy. Now if you're like a teacher or someone working in the NHS, that's why they're so cautious about you actually putting in real information in there, like a student's name or a patient's name or any information. But even if you don't put in the name, you just put in like, oh, I've got a problem with a patient and it's this. if you then in a later chat let slip, oh, Bob with the broken toe or something, or even something subtler, like you just happen to ask, about um, pregnancy or something, and then you later mention that you've got a girlfriend, you might
Yeah.
find that suddenly the AI is able to put all that together and know stuff about you that you didn't want it to know. You didn't want that company to know.
Yeah.
So you don't so as a teacher or a professional, you want to be careful about using these sort of on the market tools. Where it changes is if you are got a corporate contract with someone like Microsoft, they will claim, and you have to trust them to some degree, but to the
Yeah.
limit of whether they've been hacked or how honorable they are, how good they are as a business. But if it's a big company like Microsoft, most people would trust that when they say to them, look, this is a private interface with Copilot.
Yeah.
Um, Trust us, you can write in here and do and say and actually use corporate data or private data and discuss a customer or a patient or whatever. And so that's down to like in a company has to actually buy that corporate contract and then can say to its staff, okay, you can trust this AI that we've actually commissioned.
Yeah.
But there, I'm going a step beyond even that, where I
Yeah.
still don't even trust necessarily Microsoft. I mean, it's not like I don't trust them, but it's like if I want something where I don't feel like anybody is watching over my shoulder, I want one where I just can feel free to just say anything, do anything, just have a random conversation, not feel like it's being tracked and
Yeah.
logged somewhere. I want a model on a computer that's like on my desk. Now,
Yeah.
the challenge with that is that I don't think we're quite there yet. We've got computers, but to get like a high-powered rig, a computer, I've got a buddy and I was talking to him like, Jesus, to run a top tier model, I need to spend $15,000 to buy to build that. And he was like, well, I actually bought a second-hand one for about $1,000, and it's got 300 gigabytes of RAM and like 64 cores, and it can run a
Yeah.
pretty good model. I was like, wow, that's an interesting investment. But if you want to buy like new rather than like secondhand stuff that might be janky or whatever, um, at a minimum you'd have to spend like two and a half, 3,000 probably dollars just to get like any such type of reasonable model that actually makes sense when you're talking to it. And by the way, 6 months from now, Apple and the other companies are going to bring out another machine that's going to be like better, and you're going to want
Yeah.
that one. And your one you just invested is now potentially redundant to some degree. So that's why I was looking at renting the machines. At the moment, I'm renting them in the cloud, but now I have to trust the vendor that's renting it to me that they're not secretly getting in. But as a software professional, I can kind of harden the machine and check that they're not getting into my machine and that everything's encrypted. But if you're not a professional, this is all like way beyond most people to be able to do. And
Yeah.
so but I think there is a market, I think, in the future for people, professionals, even, slightly sort of middle class, wealthier type people to actually have a box in their house or in their
Yeah.
office. And you actually say, okay, there's my AI. And
Yeah.
I know exactly how that's configured. It's got a nice interface and it's locked down and it's isolated and it's not sending data to any faceless corporation um or intelligence service or whatever. I can trust that and I can give that access to my most sensitive information. And
Yeah.
I know it's in the data is staying here because this box is sitting in my house or in my office and it's right
Yeah.
there. Now, the next step down is like, okay, but you could also have a market where you have like local data centers where they're like, you can actually come down and see the box. It's right here. It's in this in this warehouse down the street. And
Mm.
we can actually take pictures of it and show you that this is your box or whatever. And so that might
Yeah.
be like a step down. And it's sort of what I'm doing at the moment. I'm renting one, currently using a site called halfpennymac.com. But I'm trying different sites where they're, I think, local to the UK, claim to be.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we've got to trust people at some
It's,
point. But and so then you're making decisions about do I want my data to stay in the UK or am I okay with it seeping out to the US or wherever? Um, So anyway, I don't know if that makes any
So
sense.
it does make sense. So do you think there'll be a chance in the future where you can basically configure like what you're saying, your own little box inside your house, but it has its basics on there that can be sold, but then it's configured to each individual household maybe. So it's completely autonomous, no data is being sold. A person can have it inside their house and it's theirs. And but the base can be sold on to different people, or do you think that's not possible? If that
Uh,
makes sense.
so do you mean like like having a model and reselling the model to other people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But to
yeah.
does that mean that if you're reselling it, that it can be easily, don't know if that's right, but easily be hacked into, the data could be easily be gotten hold of because you're reselling it?
So there's a few questions to unpack there. One
Yeah,
is, could people have models which they then resell access? And I think
yeah,
the answer is yes. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. I mean, frankly, you could resell most people are doing this, in fact, resell the open AI. And so, you're talking to a bot on a helpline or on the website, or you use some service where you upload a photo and it gives it back in, with crazy hair or whatever. And in fact, the thing behind that is actually that one of these cloud providers, and those companies have figured out how to make money on the difference. They've got a margin on the token cost to what they're costing to the end consumer. But if you're trying to get if you're trying to offer sovereignty, and you could actually say to your customer, this model is
yeah,
actually, we own it, was on our own boxes. It's
yeah,
not going to go out to one of these big tech companies. Maybe
yeah,
you're in a regulated environment, or maybe you're in a you just don't you're just a bit distrustful of OpenAI, maybe, or something. um then if I was doing that and I was reselling, which I have thought about doing that, I
yeah,
could get a box and I could sell to my small group of customers and say, look, this box is actually here. I can take a picture of it, and
yeah,
it's not going anywhere else. And but it's the limit of the trust. It's like, do those customers all trust me to be telling them the truth, that I'm not secretly using OpenAI or one of these other companies? But I think that trust will be established, and I think that niche vendors will be able to do what you're saying and take a box and resell the AI to some customers.
remember that TV series, The Silicon Valley, where
Yeah,
they
yeah,
start out, they say, we are never selling our data on, we're creating this, our data's never going to go anywhere. And then slowly they started selling on the data and it went somewhere else. And then were they listening to people or something who were playing one of the games? And the guy went, what are you doing? And he went, well, that's how we've got these investors because they're now paying. So it started off with being a genuine thing, and then it just grew into something where they were selling it on.
yeah. It's a danger in the industry, because once you start to get any traction,
Yeah.
there's been this pattern in the industry of like, oh, we just need to make it bigger and bigger, and you've got to make a return on investment on the investors, and the investors just want money.
Yeah.
And I don't have the full answer to that, but I think that, be like, maybe part of it is the part of the answer is create a small business and don't get greedy. Just
Yeah.
just create a thing that's useful to a small set of customers. It's making enough money to make some profit, especially in
Yeah.
a world where don't necessarily need to even um, keep a full-time employee. If the thing is running and it's like an AI service that people are using, and they're just
Yeah.
paying their little fee or whatever, and they're getting value out of it. Um, and so, like, I'm of the view of, like, create lots of little things that are useful to a small group of people, and
Yeah.
they're not, it's not getting into this huge,
Yeah.
tech oligarchy sort of
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
But I, there is always a descent into, and this is why the market moves. But I think that privacy and sovereignty is becoming more important to people. Like,
Yeah.
they're crying out for it, in my view.
I think in England it's a huge thing. I think people are noticing it more and more in England, how everything is kind of either being blocked or watched, or like even we were talking the other day about the messages that went out on the phone. And you were saying about how the bigger problem was that the messages were going out at all to everyone's phone. It wasn't just about whether it should be about big things or small things. It was the fact that they could send the message to everyone's phone, which is it's
It's
a big
yeah, it is. I mean, it's a trade-off. You want a more sort of safer society. There's threats coming. You need to be able to see what bad actors might be doing, but at the same time, you're invading people's privacy and freedom of control. Yeah, I mean that's a bigger question than this podcast maybe. But
bigger
anyway,
question. Yeah.
should we call it there?
Yeah, we can call it there. We've done 29 minutes or 27 minutes or
Oh,
something. So
my internal clock was pretty good then. So
so we're good. So yeah, perfect. Thank
cool.
you, Lindsay. That was
See you next
very
time.
interesting.
Bye.
See you next. Bye.